okay, chromosomal level, everybody's either XX or XY. That turns out not to be the case. There's all these admittedly rare variants of chromosomal sex. You can have XYY, XXY, XXYY, all of these rare ones. So these are complicated, and an X does not guarantee a female appearance, a Y does not guarantee a male. So there's a lot of variety at that level. This isn't the most interesting stuff. Where things begin to get more interesting is now looking at the next level, gonads. Yeah, they come in two flavors. It's totally clear. It's not so clear. There's a whole bunch of disorders out there where you get something kind of in between. One where you wind up with people who have a womb and fallopian tubes and testes. Whoa, those are not supposed to all go together. There's another one called ovotesticular disorder, where you get something that's kind of a chimera mixture of ovary and testes, and this thing makes estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, and so you can get this sort of thing. Next step further down. Okay, estrogen, if you're female, you secrete estrogen and progesterone, and that's it. No, it turns out if you're female, you also secrete a certain amount of testosterone from your adrenal glands. If you're a male, you only secrete androgens. Nah, you secrete a certain amount of estrogens, and some of the effects of hormones in the brain are by way of that. Okay, so that's not completely clear. Then you get to the area that's really interesting in terms of genitals. So chromosomes to gonads to all of that. Are you going to wind up having a penis or a vagina? And that seems very straightforward. And it's not so straightforward. And there's this whole world of intersexuality out there, which winds up being a debate. Are we talking about disease or are we talking about natural variation, which in a lot of ways is what it's about? Okay, two examples. First one, something called testicular feminization syndrome. It's got a fancier medical name these days, but it's like this irresistible phenomenon. And like, there's got to be all sorts of made for TV movies about this. You got a daughter, you got a perfectly normal daughter. Things are fine. Things are going great. She's growing up. She's 10 or 11. A couple of her classmates are beginning to get their periods, whatever. She's 12. Most of her friends are getting their first cycles. She's not. It's not a big deal, but she's feeling a little bit weird about it. Another year goes by, rest of the kids still not, what's up, what's wrong with me, why am I not normal? Of course, that word's got to come out. So you take her to the doctor, and the doctor examines her, and everything seems like she's going through puberty, and she's got a vagina in the right place and all that. And the doctor goes poking around and eventually sits you down and says, well, fortunately, there's no scary disease here. You have a perfectly healthy child, but your child happens to be a son. Your child is chromosomally XY. Your child has testes up in his stomach. Your child secretes testosterone, so much testosterone that it's like leaking out of his ears. There's a mutation for a gene that codes for a thing called the testosterone receptor. You got lots of testosterone, but your cells can't hear it. And you wind up with a female phenotype. You wind up with somebody who, up until you had your daughter checked out there, you thought was a daughter. And what's typically done with this is a clear-cut one. Sometimes it's a little more ambiguous than that. What the most humane medical thing is to not say, oh my God, you have a son, but to say you have a totally healthy child who happens, she will never be able to have a child because she has no ovaries, because there's a fertility problem here. So that one's out there. Then there's an even weirder one. And this is, again, a mutation. This one is called 5-alpha reductase deficiency. And it's found in this one inbred population way up in the mountains in the Dominican Republic, and another population way up in the mountains in New Guinea. Like medical geneticists, love the highlands of New Guinea, because you get these isolated populations up there and inbreeding, and you get all sorts of interesting mutations. So here's one of these interesting ones. You give birth to a daughter and everything's fine and all of that. And right around puberty, she suddenly converts into having male genitalia and a male appearance, a male phenotype. What's up with this? This is this mutation and this enzyme that makes testosterone for you. And this is a chromosomal male who simply was not secreting much testosterone up until around puberty, when there was enough of a surge of it that you have a change. You have a change, and you get this transition from like a vagina to a penis or whatever. And this is something that occurs now and then. It's extremely rare. For my money, the most interesting thing about it is in both of these populations, just on an anthropological level, people deal with it. It's, I don't know, 1 out of 100 births or something like that. And it's just like, you hit puberty, sometimes you get acne, sometimes you get a penis, and you didn't have one of those before, and whatever, and let's just go about business. Cultural adaptation to this. But the point is, that's another one where you have a continuum. And
I'm sorry, let me just, I thought Nessa White made a really good point here, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. She said that it's interesting they're considered disorders. I heard you use the word disease, disorder, syndrome. Are those some words maybe we need to move away from? Like if someone has a blue and a brown eye, do we call that a disorder just because it's rare? Or like, what are your thoughts on the terminology around these, I don't know if we call them conditions or... genetic
This
anomalies?
is like a fantastic question, because who gets to decide what's normal and how much variation is there around it, and what counts as like normal human variability versus a disease, and who decides this is it? Yeah, this is like a perpetual massive challenge in the field. And often what it revolves around is, well, just how prevalent is this? How many people are there out there? And this is where an astonishing factoid comes in. So you have these individuals, it's very rare with this testicular feminization syndrome that it's absolutely, unarguably a female genitalia, or with this isolated population. Often you get elements of both. You get somebody who is intersexual, somebody who has elements of both, and where it's often ambiguous at birth if they actually are male or female. How often is this? Walk around on the streets of your community or whatever, and walk past the maternity ward, and the odds that a child has been born there with sexually ambiguous genitalia is greater than the odds that walking around your town you've walked past someone with an IQ of 140 or higher.
Interesting.
There's a higher prevalence of sexually ambiguous genitalia at birth than there is of, somebody who's 2 standard deviations out in their IQ or whatever. So having an IQ of 141 a disease? No, it's just a very rare version of normal human variability. And, disease labeling is often in the eyes of the beholder. And there's endless remarkable stories in sort of history of medicine of people who have a disease where you can fix them and it turns out they don't think they have a disease and they're doing just fine, and like great stories with that. So sexually ambiguous genitalia, does 1 to 2% of the population, is that an anomaly? Is that a quirk? I don't know. 2% of the population walks outside and sneezes because the sun is bright. I'm one of those. Is that a disease? Is that an idiosyncrasy? Is that normal? And this is where this stuff is getting into the, not just the beholder, but the eyes of those who get to hand out the designations.